Hi, my name is Tara Rosling. I play President T'Rina on Star Trek Discovery, and you're listening to Trek Untold.
Hello and welcome to Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars. I'm your host, Matthew Kaplowitz. Star Trek is all about the future that we strive to be. And with Star Trek Discovery, it's basically the future of the future. It's very timey-wimey. This week, we're taking a trip to the unified Vulcan and Romulan homeworld as we chat with President T'Rina from Star Trek Discovery, Tara Rosling. You've seen Tara in seasons 3 and 4 of Discovery, first appearing in Unification Part 3, and through many episodes of the 4th season dealing with the threat of Species 10C, and we will surely be seeing more of her for seasons to come, especially with the budding romance between her and Saru. Beyond Star Trek, you can find Tara in Impulse, The Expanse, Murdoch Mysteries, The Dresden Files, The War Next Door, and much more, including some things we're going to chat about today. Tara's also spent a good amount of her career on stage in her home country of Canada, so we're going to get to the bottom of her work there and dig deep into the methods she uses to perform some of her most significant roles, as well as learning how that has affected her work on Star Trek. There's one role in particular that we talked about that I never knew about that clearly had a lot of influence on how she plays President T'Rina, so you're going to like hearing that story. Tara is a truly lovely person with a legitimate acting pedigree, and she was definitely one of my favorite people to chat with while recording this current season of the show. I hope you enjoy hearing her stories as much as I did. And without further ado, let's discover the actress behind those Vulcan ears, Tara Rosling. But before we begin this week's episode, I want to remind you to follow Trek Untold on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Trek Untold, all one word. You can get show updates, check out some fun memes, and let me know what you think about what's going on with the current events in the Star Trek universe. You can also support this show directly on Patreon at patreon.com/TrekUntold, where you can support this show for as little as $2 a month. At higher tiers, you can listen to the shows before they come out, know about my guests well in advance, and even have a chance to ask them questions, get transcripts of these episodes to make sure you get all the info, and more benefits coming soon, including watch parties and live streams. But that's all dependent on more fans like you coming over and letting me know you want to be a part of events like that. If you want some Trek Untold merchandise, check out our store for gear and apparel, including shirts, hats, stickers, water bottles, notebooks, and a whole lot more. New designs will be added throughout the year, so it's always worth taking a peek. Trek Untold also has an Amazon shop where you can peruse everything Star Trek, sci-fi, and geeky on Amazon in one convenient location. If you're looking for a gift for the Trekkie in your life, or maybe want to see some of my favorite non-Star Trek things that you can get for yourself, check out the link for my Amazon shop in the show notes on the audio version and in the description below this video on YouTube. If you're listening to us on iTunes or any other audio platforms that allow for ratings and reviews, please leave us a 5-star rating and a positive review to help out this show. If you're watching it on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to us at youtube.com/TrekUntold and give the video a thumbs up and a comment. All of these things help more people find this show and to continue growing and bringing you awesome guests each and every week. Now, without further ado, let's beam in this week's guest. Computer, access interview file. And welcome back to Trek Untold, and now joining us all the way, well, not from the 32nd century this time. She's taken off the pointy ears for us today, but we are joined by Tara Rosling. Tara, how are you today?
I'm very well, Matthew. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being here, chatting with us today. I know Navarre is quite far away from where we're doing this interview, but
it was a big trip. Yeah.
And boy, are your arms tired, right? Is that the joke next?
Yeah, it was a big flap, but no, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I want to start things off here, Tara, just by asking you pretty much what I ask all my guests, and that would be, what is your earliest memory of Star Trek? Did you grow up watching the series?
No, I didn't. In fact, you know what? I was exposed to very little television as a child. Oh. My mom was, she was a bit of a hippie, and we had a fairly nomadic lifestyle. And I have a very vivid memory of us getting our first TV. It was like a 13-inch black and white portable television when I was maybe 8 or 9 years old. But up until then, we hadn't had a television in our home. And Star Trek wasn't something that I watched frequently. I watched like Love Boat, Fantasy Island. But I remember seeing the original series and quite enjoying it. It was fantastic. Really, really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Well, you kind of alluded to a few things here, which is perfect for my follow-up question, which is, Tara, can you tell us where you were born, who your parents were, and what little Tara Rosling wanted to be when she grew up?
Ah, I was born in Seattle, Washington. My father was with the Navy for a while, and then he was a shipbuilder, I believe. I actually didn't know my father very well. My mom walked out the door when I was 2, and I had very little contact with him. And my mother has had, I guess she's had many occupations, but she's currently a music therapist. But she would, I mean, I grew up in a household which very much encouraged the arts. So I didn't have to, I didn't have to battle my mother to pursue what I fell in love with. She actually, when I went to university, because I grew up in Vancouver, my mom would fly across the country to Toronto to see me in all my plays at university numerous times. So she was a devout follower. So that's what they did. And then, sorry, what was the second part of the question? What did little Tara want to do when she grew
Yeah,
up?
I mean, you mentioned your parents were very supportive of you in the arts, but I mean, is that what you
Yeah.
wanted to be as a kid? Did you see yourself even as a kid being an actress or a
I was
performer?
one of those kids that like, one day you'd want to be a teacher and the next day you'd want to be, I don't know, we'd play librarian and we'd check books in and out and all that jazz. But, I fell in love with acting very young. I fell in love with acting at 13 and I knew that's what I wanted to do. So it was actually a gift from my mom and my grandmother to do an acting class, and I had a really wonderful teacher who deeply inspired me, and I got the bug, and it was like, this is it. This is what I'm gonna do. Yeah.
So now, once you get out of high school, let's say, I mean, I assume you're doing a lot of like performances in high school, right, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I did go to, yeah, there wasn't a lot I could do in elementary school, but I did audition for, it was a high school across the city of Vancouver, so I had to commute, and they had a special drama program. And for grades 11 and 12, we did plays and we did theater festivals, and yeah, so we did all that. But then it wasn't until like then I left Vancouver at 17 to go to university in Toronto, and that's where I studied drama acting. Um, and then when I got out of school, it took me a long time for anybody to hire me. Like, it was the standard cliche of, I was a very good waitress in downtown Toronto, and I would do theater for free until somebody actually hired me, which was probably my late 20s when I started working professionally as an actor.
Well, I want to ask you a little bit about your time in university in Toronto. And by the way, just because I don't really know Canadian schools, but is it like the University of Toronto, or is there like a proper other name for it?
No, there is U of T. So
Okay.
University of Toronto is mostly based in downtown Toronto. I went to York University, which is north of the city. It's probably like one of the ugliest places you can imagine. I got there from Vancouver, which is quite insanely beautiful, right, with the ocean and the mountains, and I thought it sounded very prestigious, and that there'd be like leather chairs and fireplaces. Like, York sounds pretty, and I got there and I wanted to cry. It's like it's just, I call it the armpit of Toronto. Like, it's just like suburban nowhere. And I think the campus was originally intended for California. So there's like these crazy wind tunnels in the winter, which are really, really fierce. And yeah, but the drama program was really well respected, and I had some good teachers, and very much enjoyed my education there. But the bonus of going there was one of my professors was very well linked with an agent in Toronto. So I got out of school and had representation right away, which was a major bonus.
Yeah, that's a pretty huge deal to get right out of school and have that, because I know there's a lot of actors who are probably struggling nowadays who don't even have representation. So that's huge.
Yeah. I think particularly now it's really, really hard because with the pandemic, um, yeah, there's just less work. So it's very tricky to get representation right now.
So, right, we're talking about now Tara being a waitress and she's working, trying to find herself an acting gig. So, what is that very first gig that you land that you tell your boss, hey, I got to take my shift off, so have someone else handle the hash browns? What was that very first pro gig for you?
Um, I think the first substantial one was I was basically a glorified extra on a Hugh Grant and Sarah Jessica Parker film. I'm blanking on the name. Was it called Extreme Measures? That might be something else. I think that was anyway. And so because I had enough work on that particular project, it gave me enough money to produce my own play. So I produced a one-woman show that was written by a Toronto playwright. And like I made the posters, I took all the bookings, I blah blah blah, and somehow that after doing that play, people started hiring me in theater. I mean, prior to that, I'd already worked a little bit in film and TV. So, but it was really trying to get my foothold into the world of theater. And yeah, so that happened in my probably when I was 28, 29.
So what was that first experience like, if you remember it? And by the way, it was Extreme Measures. I just checked that
Oh, it
on
was
the
Extreme
old
Measures.
IMDb. So you got it right.
I should remember these things. It's terrible. It was awesome. Like we were in our scrubs. There was a whole bunch of us actually in the ER room. I know there was trauma. Like I think it was when Hugh Grant, it was the whole the scandal with Hugh Grant. And so like we didn't spend a lot of time chatting with the stars or anything, but the number of us that were the extras, I mean, we weren't our job wasn't defined as extras. We had, but that's what it felt like. We had a great time. It was a really fun job.
So around this time, was your goal to be a working theater performer, or did you want to be on screen, or were you hoping to balance the two?
I mean, I think ultimately we hope to balance the two. Theater's been I've worked predominantly in theater, and certainly my training was geared towards the stage. And I do love being on stage. As you know, it's a completely different medium, and it's the actor's medium. But if you can do both, that's a major gift. Like one is substantially more lucrative than the other. But it's very difficult to balance the two worlds, because I was just talking to somebody about this today. The theater books about a year in advance, and film and TV kind of books the week before. If you get that much lead time, the world of film and TV, well, particularly TV, it just happens so quickly. And so what I found myself doing was, if I was working in theater, then I'd have like the Shaw Festival here where I live in Niagara-on-the-Lake. You're generally employed for 8 months of the year. Like it's a really lovely gig. So you go into rehearsals in March and you'd perform through the summer into the fall, and then you'd use the off time to audition for film and TV. But for something like Star Trek, which has been such an incredible gift for me, it's impossible to work the theater world around Star Trek, because the Star Trek, the season we've been shooting at a different time every year. So it doesn't fit into the Shaw Festival schedule. So, yeah, it's just hard to balance both. But I think most actors enjoy working in both, the challenge of both worlds. And I think, strangely, this is a segue, but I think that the theater training and the world of working on the stage lends itself really well to the world of Star Trek. I find it very, for lack of a better word, operatic, where you need to have control of the text and stand and deliver these big ideas with real conviction. So that's just a segue. Sorry, Matthew.
Oh, that's not at all a problem. And I do have to say too, your experiences with talking about how theater works versus how the TV industry works. It's a shared sentiment. We've heard this a lot of times on the show before as well. So it's they are two very different beasts. But you are correct, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit still and jump into the Star Trek discussion. But I've talked to a lot of folks who have done theater work, and they transition really wonderfully into Star Trek, especially if they're portraying aliens. But we're going to come back to that point. But I do want to actually spend a little bit more time on your theater stuff, because when I do research for these podcasts, it's really easy for me to look at my IMDb and then just like start watching things on YouTube or HBO Max or wherever something might be. But in your case, a lot of your career has been the theater, so it's been hard to find that, hard to track that down, and hard to see those performances that are probably very crucial to who you are as a performer. So if you don't mind, just for our audience who might not be as familiar with your theatrical work, can you just run down a few of, I don't want to say like key roles, but some of your favorite roles that you've performed in your home country, and I guess what stood out to you? What did you learn from those roles?
Well, it's always a learning curve. Acting is always a learning curve. It's something we very much learn practically, right? But some of the pivotal, like one of my first big gigs was I played Viola and Twelfth Night at the Stratford Festival, which is the other very big repertory theatre festival in Canada. So there's the Stratford Festival of Canada and the Shaw Festival, and those are the two big reps. And that was a really big gig for me. And Viola, I mean, that was my first time live performing in, like, I'd done smaller productions of Shakespeare, but on a stage of that size, like the festival stage at the Stratford Festival is 1,800 seats. So it's like, it's a big theater. And that was she's such a lovely, I don't know if you're familiar with Twelfth Night but she's a really lovely character. I never felt that I fully nailed that part, but I certainly very much enjoyed the production. And some
From
of
what
the
I've
big
understood,
ones,
I think we've talked about 12th Night a few other times. I think in fact when I spoke with Armin Shimmerman, we talked about 12th Night as that being like kind of a challenging play to put on. I've heard about it. Do you feel
yeah,
that way?
well, I mean, all of Shakespeare's plays they're just so epic, right? There's such big, and there's multiple storylines, there's so many characters. So you need a theater really that has the resources that Stratford does to put on those plays, because they're really expensive. Like,
Shakespeare
I
ain't
think
cheap.
our cast was 30, might have been more, and they build your costumes just like Star Trek. They build your costumes for you, like they're stunning and there's beautiful sets, and but I don't know if it's one of his trickier plays to perform per se. Like, it's not considered one of the problem plays, but all of his plays are epic. Like, they're of a grandiose nature. At the Shaw Festival, certainly one of my biggest parts was Saint Joan. I got to play Saint Joan, and yeah, that's just an exquisite gift to be offered. It was an exhausting task, because um, she's so ferocious in her convictions, and the amount of energy it costs her to persuade everybody to do what she thinks they need to do. But I love doing that, and we actually took that production to Chicago. What else? Eliza Doolittle in My Fair Lady. I think, well, the play's called Pygmalion. The musical is called. What else? There's been all kinds. I mean, I've been very, very lucky at the Shaw Festival to have been given a substantial number of gorgeous parts to play. That's and that was under a certain artistic director. That was under the leadership of Jackie Maxwell, who was very much she was an advocate for female playwrights, for female directors, for women's stories, and I was lucky enough to be at the festival during her tenure. So and was given, like, as I said, exquisite opportunities. We're now under a new artistic directorship that has gone in a slightly different direction. But mostly during Tim Carroll's time at the helm, I've been doing, like, for the past 3 years, I haven't been at the festival. So, and those are the two big companies I've worked at. I've also done lots of work at independent theaters in Toronto, and but not really outside of Ontario. That's been where I've done most of my stage work. Yeah.
So what experience do you prefer then? Do you prefer being really on stage or on screen? I mean, if you could only do one, what would it be?
If I could only do one, it would be stage, probably.
Why is
Yeah.
that? What's the reason for stage being the one?
Well, I think it also speaks to the roles that I've been given to play. So you're given this incredible arc as a character, and once you step on the stage, it's your journey. Nobody else cut. You don't go back. You don't sit around for like half an hour waiting for the lighting to change, or and so it's very much the actor's medium, and it's different every single. I mean, with camera, it's different every time too. Hopefully, every take is fresh and every take is new, and you're playing something different, but every single night on the stage is a different journey, because you have a different audience, and because you are slightly different on that evening, or that for that matinee. And so it's just I don't know, it's like a 2 hour, 3 hour ride where you just have to, you just ride the wave. And sometimes you'll come off stage and go, oh my God, I quit, I'm terrible. And other days you'll come off stage and go, wow, that was amazing. Like I now I remember why I do what I do. But there's just something about the live theater experience, the live engagement with the audience, and performing in the moment. And you know what's funny is that sometimes I forget when I'm doing camera work that I can stop and restart. So I'm like, if I screw up a line, because most of those actors they've been working in front of the camera for so long, if they flub a line, they'll stop. And then they'll say, if I flub a line, like they'll just repeat it, right? And I'm like, oh shit. Okay, sorry. Like I forget that that world has that capacity. I still think that I'm in live theater mode all the time.
That's a really cool thing. I guess that's probably what attracts a lot of people to the theater, is the fact that it is a conversation not only with your scene partner, but also with the audience and the energy that they're giving you. And it sounds like you really like to have that conversation with the entire whoever's around you, essentially.
Yeah, it's a well, you know, I've compared it to communion. Like it's a very close thing to. I'm not a religious person by nature. Like I believe in that there's energy, and there's, but I don't believe in God per se. But I think that theater is the closest thing that I've encountered to communion, where everybody is it's just this incredible thing where everybody's focus is intertwined in that moment. Everybody's meeting in that moment. I don't know how it's to articulate it, but you know, and it isn't always that. You can go to the theater and it's like you come out and go, oh my God, that's 3 hours of my life, I want it back. and I've had those experiences, right? But when it's good, it's really, really sweet. But then, you know, you don't get to do things that you get to do in front of a camera.
That's true.
Like, you know, like in Star Trek, I have these amazing years that I'm in outer space, and it's and there's all kinds of wonderful special, like, you know, they're very different worlds. And I think the world of film and TV has great allure to it. Like it's a very mysterious world.
Well, to kind of dig a little bit deeper on that point, because I really liked what you just said about how you feel like it's like a communion with something, I guess, bigger than us, if you will. So to kind of break that down a little bit further, would you say, like, when you're performing on stage, or even if you're performing in front of a camera, for you, is it more of a meditation where it's very much an internal kind of thing, an internal sensation, or is it like a testimony that you're sharing with the world? Is it more intrinsic or external for you? And what is the conversation that happens? How much of it is within you versus how much of it is with everyone around you?
Well, I think it's the meeting point of everybody. Like ideally, right? I'm speaking in idealistic terms again. Like, you know, you can get out there and decide that you're just going to say your lines the way you've said them before, and, you know, and get through the show because you're having a shitty day and whatever. Or you can be out there and really listening and really connecting, and because you hear something slightly different, your next line comes out slightly different, and you're actually in the performance space doing the thing in the present moment, which is the magic. That's when the magic happens. But I would say that acting is more a meditation because of the focus required. I think there's a real specificity of focus that is required when one is performing. And and this is, I found this is very applicable to T'Rina in terms of meditate. Like she's, you know, her focus, anyway, she's such a highly refined mind, right? Or Vulcans have such highly, it also depends on the genre. Like if you're doing a farce or you're doing like some kind of play, it becomes very presentational, right? So it's then that way you're acting out. But I would compare it more to meditative. Yeah, if that answers your question.
I think so. I know that's a really crazy out there kind of question.
No, I'm trying to understand it. It's a really cool question, and I'm yeah.
You know, we might not even have the answers for it today, but just something, you know, I guess for us to consider too, because the art of acting itself, it's such a broad spectrum of ways you can perform, and of ways you can express yourself, and for whom you're expressing yourself to, whether it's for you to express something that you have, you want to get out of you, or if you're expressing it solely for the purpose of the people sitting there watching you. So it can really be, I guess, any kind of answer on any given day.
Yeah, and I think different actors work in different ways as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So to kind of knock this highbrow conversation down a few pegs, I'm gonna have to ask about some other weird stuff now on your resume.
Okay.
And
Uh-oh.
I'm not gonna ask about Puppets Who Kill, even though I did find that. I don't want to. That's a whole other can of worms. Puppets Who Kill will be for different day. But you do have a sort of weird Star Trek connection early on your resume, and that was when you did an episode of Tek War back in
Ah,
'96.
that
Uh,
was my first. So the weird thing in, I don't know, you probably know this, but the weird thing in TV is that you have to get like 3 professional credits before you get your union card.
yep.
And I think Tek War was the one that got me my union card. So I had like one line on, oh, I'm not even going to remember the name of the shows, but you know, when you're starting out, you just want to do anything. Just please hire me. And Tek War, they took a really big risk because they offered me quite a substantial part and I didn't have my union card yet. But yes, people have spoke to me about this connection before.
And I do know, unfortunately, that you didn't share the screen with Shatner because I did find the episode. So yeah, I do my homework. But yeah, unfortunately, no time spent with Shatner on screen. But I mean, did you get to bask in the glow of Shatner at any point off camera?
No, no, we didn't cross paths at all. Yeah.
Well, how was your experience overall being that kind of show? Because I imagine that was probably like your first time doing a sci-fi show too, right?
It was my first time doing sci-fi. I think I was pretty nervous because it was, you know, it was a relatively big part. It takes you a long time to learn the ropes of the set. Like it's its own entity and yeah. So but I'm trying to remember who played my father in that. I really enjoyed working with him. And overall it was a very enjoyable experience. Absolutely. I'm terrible. It really was about 3 lifetimes ago that I did that. And I should, like, if you talk to Doug Jones, he remembers everything. I'm so jealous. He's like, when I played this part on this show with this person like 30 years ago, you know, like, how do you do that? So I should remember the name of the actor that played my father, but I'm ashamed to say that I don't.
Well, it's all right. I mean, like I said, it is a lifetime ago, and it was Tek War. So, I mean, no one remembers Tek War but me, so this is fine.
I don't think you're alone, actually.
But on the topic of something also obscure and nerdy, I was shocked to discover that you are technically part of the Marvel Universe because you were the voice of Nova on the Silver Surfer animated series. And I
Yeah.
remember watching that show as a kid. And just, again, trying to find clips of that on YouTube. I was like, wow, this is really cool. So, as far as I can tell on your resume, it looks like you didn't do a lot of VO work. But I'm curious, like what your experience was like working on an animated series, if you like that role, and why that didn't become more of an avenue for you.
Yeah, I don't know. I really enjoy doing voice work. It's super fun to be in the booth and to not have to care what you look like and just to play around until you get the take that you want. Like you could be there in your pajamas and like it's all so I really enjoyed playing Nova. I don't know why that world didn't develop more for me. I've never done like a voice demo. These days you kind of have to have a voice demo. And I haven't done any workshops in that world either. Perhaps if I pursued it more aggressively, it would come to fruition for me. But I don't know why. Like I'd be happy to do more. Every once in a while, like at my agency, I have my acting agent, and then there is also a voice agent. And every once in a while, he'll say, "Can you do can you tape yourself for this advertisement or this audiobook but I never book the darn thing." So
Yeah, and I do want to add to that's not like an accusatory kind of thing, like why aren't you doing more VO or whatever. It's
yeah,
more just like
yeah,
it was, yeah, it was a really good role. So I mean, I thought you did
yeah,
some
yeah.
excellent
No,
work, and
it was a delight, and really, yeah, it's a really fun challenge to work in that world of animation because there's a different energy level to it, right? Yeah, to match that. But no, I'd be happy to do more. Yeah.
I do have one other thing that I was like really surprised to see on the resume too that made me excited, and that was that you did a remake of the Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, and
Oh,
I'm a
yeah.
fan of the original, and I did
Yeah.
not know that this version existed until I was looking through your resume, and like
Ah,
I looked at the list of who was performing this thing, and I mean it's a heck of a list. I mean you're working with Edward James Olmos, Vincent D'Onofrio,
yeah,
Lorraine Bracco, Richard Schiff, Donnie Wahlberg will throw in too, why not?
yeah,
And a really accomplished character actor too, Kenneth Walsh Kenneth
yeah,
Welsh is in that rather. It's a great cast. It seemed like a
yeah.
great movie. It's a little hard to find these days, but I'd love to hear what you remember of being a part of that film and working with some of those folks.
Oh, it was awesome. Like that whole experience was really wonderful. The director, you're going to tell me his name because he was beautiful to work with. He was a lot of fun. I remember he had up like a portable jukebox. And of course we shot a lot of it in like a ghost subway station. So downtown Toronto, there's this old subway station that's no longer being used. And we'd be, underground for great swaths of time, and he'd have his portable jukebox so he could like play tunes in between takes. Do you
That
have
director was Felix Enriquez Alcala.
Yeah, he was lovely. So when I auditioned for that, they auditioned me for a tiny part, and they kept bringing me back until finally, I don't even think I auditioned for my character was Mr. Brown, right?
Yep, Mr. Brown.
Yeah,
Yep.
because I don't even think I auditioned, and then my agent called and said they've cast you as one of the four thugs, one of the four.
For train robbers.
Yeah, yeah. Which was super fun. I was like, I think at one point I had to swing around like an AK-47 or something, having no idea. And I look about 12 years old. Have you seen any pictures of me? Like
I couldn't find much at all. I found like
Oh
one
my
little
God.
clip on YouTube. That's it. It's just like it's this hidden gem out there, I feel like.
Yeah, no, I look like I'm 12. But I had a blast. And then Vincent D'Onofrio's manager actually took me on, and that's the first time I went down to LA for a little while.
Oh.
I didn't stay very long. I don't think LA is my world. I like to ride my bike around town and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, that shoot. A lot of fun.
You have to remind me here because I forget who's who. But does Mr. Brown survive or not?
No, I got shot. Pretty sure I got shot.
And was that you actually getting shot with the squibs?
God, I can't believe I can't remember this stuff. Sorry, what was the question?
And was that you then getting shot up with squibs for your death scene?
Yeah, I did wear a squib. That's right. Yeah.
How'd you like that? Was that your first time doing that?
It was my first time. I don't think I've done that since, actually. That's pretty wild. That's pretty wild. Yeah.
You never forget your first time getting squibbed up, right?
No, this is true. This is true. Yeah.
Trek Untold will return momentarily.
Trek Untold is sponsored by Triple Fiction Productions. Celebrating 15 years in business in 2023, TFP creates 3D printed Star Trek and sci-fi inspired items that fit into any collection. Whether you're a cosplayer who wants a Starfleet phaser, a Bajoran tricorder, or a Klingon dagger, or a toy collector looking for that special accessory or diorama to make your figures truly stand out, Triple Fiction Productions has exactly what you need. And for you figure fanatics, that includes products that are the perfect size for Galoob, Mego, Playmates, and everything in between. All products are 3D printed in the US, with new designs constantly being updated on their website. Repeat customers can sign up for TFP's loyalty program for free, which is a great way to save money as you build your collection. Repeat customers can sign up for TFP's loyalty program for free, which is a great way to save money as you build your collection. Repeat customers can sign up for TFP's loyalty program for free, where the more you order, the more discounts you receive. TFP also has a pay what you want section, where clearance or misprinted items are available at a discounted price. Best of all, every product can be shipped worldwide. As a special bonus for listeners of this show, Trek Untold has a special discount code just for you. Enter Untold10 at checkout for 10% off of all orders with no minimum purchase required. That's 10% off using Untold10. To see all of their products, head to triple-fictionproductions.net. Or to stay up to date on their newest products, find them on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Triple Fiction Productions, where something is only impossible until it happens.
Are you looking for the perfect fashion statement to show you're a geek and proud of it? Well, welcome to Geek Girls Castle, where I make fun and functional geeky clothing and accessories for every occasion. My name is Missy, and I started creating my own gear and apparel in 2015 to bring nerdy products to the geek girl population, which does include all LGBTQA+, non-binary, and POC and BIPOC folks. I couldn't find anything for us gals except t-shirts, so I decided to combine my passion for fashion with my fandoms, ranging from handmade skirts with really large pockets, travel accessories like toiletry bags, luggage tags, and zippered pouches. I also embroider nerdy items for home decor like wall hangings and hand towels, and products like keychains, bookmarks, and journal covers. Need something to carry all that in? Well, I make great bags to put all those accessories into or onto. Whether you like Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, Marvel, DC, and everything else in between, there is something for every geek girl. My website is constantly updated with new styles and fandoms, no matter what time or dimension you come from. If you'd like to browse my products or ask for something custom, visit me at geekgirlscastle.com. That's geekgirlscastle.com.
All right, so Tara, let's now beam into our Star Trek discussion here, and man, we have a lot to go through here. So, you are President T'Rina from the 32nd century, the president of Navarre.
Yeah.
Let's just start from the very beginning of this process here. So, how did you get the role, and did you know that you were auditioning for a Star Trek show when you auditioned?
This is a very popular question. So how I think I got the role might be different from how I got the role, but I will tell you what I know is I was working on a show at the time called Impulse. It was a drama that was created for YouTube Red. You heard of Impulse? With Maddie Hasten as the lead. It was a great show. I loved working. I played a very repressed Mennonite on it, and it was a super fun character, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I just say that as a sidebar, and then I'll go to, so my agent calls me, says, Tara, I've got an audition for you. It's a really tight turnaround. We need to have this submitted by tomorrow. I love the world I work in. It's like, here's a whole bunch of sides and we need this by tomorrow. Thank you very much. So, I knew it was for Star Trek, although it was under a code name at that point. I think it was, I don't know. There's been a few at this point. It might come back to me later, but it was, you get the sides under a code name, but my agent said, and this is Star Trek. But the sides didn't say, I didn't know what species. It did not say, I think it said Admiral. Some of the text was actually part of the script, and some of it wasn't. I think it was, so I did it as quickly as I could, and I sent it off. And then a couple of days later, my agent called and he said, you've been pinned. And do you know this lingo?
I'm going to assume that means that they've got you up for consideration.
Yeah, so they pick a few people and they put you on hold and they double check your dates. And he said, but I've got to tell you, Tara, there's like 5 women from my roster alone have been pinned for this part. So like he likes to tell me not to get my hopes up too high when these things happen. I'm like, okay, whatever. And then later he calls, he said, they want you to come for a prosthetics test. And I was like, oh, that's weird. What, like, do they want to know if I'm like, if I wear them okay, or if I'm like allergic, or, and I said, that's weird, that because they haven't offered the part, but they want me to come and do this test. And he said, yeah, that's what they want. So I had to drive into the city because I live in Niagara-on-the-Lake, which is an hour and a half outside of Toronto. So by the time I got to Toronto, he called me again. He said, you've been offered the part. It's like, okay, great. But when we got to the read through, because generally, it used to be in-house, in person, you do a read through for every script before you go to camera. When we were all sitting around this big table, this man came up to me and he said, hi, my name's John. I'm really happy you're here. I'm the editor on Impulse, but I'm directing this episode. So John Dudkowski, I think that's how you pronounce his last name. I think he had, I don't know how much sway, but he was certainly, I think he was involved in at least having me read for the part. He just said, like, I really love your work, and I hope they see what I see in you, and somehow that there's, after we shot the episode, he said, I really hope that they end up somehow evolving this character, that this character moves forward. But at that point it was a one-off. At that point it was one episode. So there's a very long-winded answer to your question.
Not at all. And it's curious too, you mentioned the prosthetics test, because I wonder if that was their way of vetting you to see if you're actually going to go through with it.
Maybe. When you do the audition, there's a whole bunch of things you have to say in your slate. You know what a slate is. Hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. I'm this tall. And then you have to say, I'm not allergic to latex. I can wear contacts, and I'm not claustrophobic, because like a lot of characters are in full, well, Saru's in full mask, or he wears contacts. So there's this litany of things that you have to go through to, yeah. So I'm not sure why it shook down as it did, but I sit here today extremely grateful that it did.
Yeah, you booked it, you got the role, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So now you got to figure out the hard part, which is what the heck is a Vulcan and how do they work, how do they operate? So,
Well, I don't think it was until I got the script that I learned she was a Vulcan, right?
oh,
Like, it's
okay.
like, again, this world is so crazy. Like, this is one of the things that baffles me is, I'll get 8 pages of sides for an audition that's due in 2 days, and they don't give you any context. Like that, you don't know what, like you have to, start Googling, oh, this is like sci-fi, or oh, this is futuristic, or oh, this is based on the novel. What's the book? But you get all this stuff, and you just have to create, by the skin of your teeth. You're just like, okay, I'll make it into this, and hopefully this speaks to them. But yeah, I don't think it was until I got the script that I was like, oh my God, I'm a president, I'm a Vulcan, and oh my God, I have a lot of words. Yeah, so go ahead. So then I had to create a Vulcan. Then I had to figure out.
I should follow up with that. What was that turnover from the day you got that script, finding out what you were actually doing, to when you had to actually do it?
I didn't really go down the Vulcan rabbit hole. Like, I didn't kind of look to my predecessors and go, how did you play this? The only thing that I really did that for was a mind meld, because I was, there's real precision to a mind meld, and there's
Can you show us the right way to do that?
Sorry?
Can you show us the right way to do a mind meld?
I don't know if I can, because there's some variations, but the one that I used was like the thumb under the chin, and then the index finger kind of on the cheek, and then this third finger goes on the temple. So it's this thing. But then there's ones where this is higher, I think, and there's like there are different variations. But I didn't get fired, so I must have done it okay. I really lent on the logic. And I kind of went down the path of like Buddhist monk, somebody that is deeply versed in meditation. So there's time and space between emotion and thought, or what is emitted into the world. I do believe, and I could have made this up, but I do believe in the script, because a lot of people have addressed the fact that T'Rina has more of an emotional life than your traditional Vulcan. And I do believe in the script it said she was part human. And so when I got on set, I kind of asked about that a little bit. And so then actually in season 4, she actually says to Book, it's not that we don't feel emotion, it's that we've cultivated the mind so we are able to function above the emotion. So yeah, I just really love that notion of, or I like to think of that notion of detachment that is used in Buddhism, where you don't attach, you can observe the feeling or observe the thought, but as soon as you attach to it, then you own it, and you become it, and you play on it. But if you can just observe it and allow it to go by, then hopefully you can respond free of it.
So you are the empty cup, essentially.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because we spoke to on this show not that long ago an artist named Kavita Maharaj, and she does paintings of Star Trek folks, and one of her favorites of all time is Spock. And in our discussion, we talked about how she believes that Spock is a yoga master. And part of that is because of how he controls his emotions. He doesn't let his emotions control him.
Yes.
Which I think is a pretty unique way of looking at it, but it's a very accurate, surprisingly accurate way to like look at that kind of a character. And I feel like that kind of leans into a little bit about what you're saying with your Buddhist approach to the character.
Yeah. Like, can you imagine if we were all able to take a moment before responding emotionally to so many of the circumstances around us? What a different world it would be. Anyway, yeah, I really admire that ability of the Vulcan.
Well, I'm going to ask you a few more questions about the ins and outs of being President T'Rina in a minute, but I do got to follow up now about the makeup process, because I know for your character, I don't know if it's going to be as crazy as like, Ava Blackwell as Nahlis or things like that, but there's still some heavy work involved there. So what's a typical day for you in the makeup chair?
The entire process takes about 3 hours. So to walk you through, there's the wig cap goes on, then they send me over to prosthetics. They put on my ears, they cover my brows. There's a slightly new way recently of doing things, but yeah, so they actually put it's like glue, like the ears are made out of glue, and the pads to cover my brows, the other brows go on, so that takes a while, and then they adjust the color of my skin and the color of the ears, so that the painting process takes a while. Then they send me back to makeup. Then I go back over to hair for the wig, and then I go back to prosthetics, where they finally place the brows according to where the wig sits. And so all told, I mean, it's a bit quicker than it initially was, but they allot 3 hours for my processing. So some mornings you get to be on set at, I don't know, 2:30 a.m.
I mean, hey, hopefully you get the overtime pay, right?
Yes. Yeah, and hopefully you get a good nap at lunch.
Yeah. A lot of actors who I've spoke to on this show who wear the heavy prosthetics, they tell me that they have like an aha moment the first time they see themselves in the mirror completely decked out in the outfit and the makeup. Did you have a similar experience?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I have to say that the wardrobe also contributes a great deal to, like, as soon as all that comes together, absolutely. I compare T'Rina's wardrobe to, I find it very geisha. It's very corseted. It's very, everything is, what's the word that I want? It's not good.
Constrained, maybe?
Yeah, a little bit, but not in a way where it's cut off, but it's just held together, which is a kind of, again, goes back to that mind of the practice, the discipline. There's a great deal of discipline, so that the wardrobe really lends itself to that. Yeah, absolutely. Pointy ears and a funky little wig and a great outfit.
I mean, did you find yourself getting lost in the character the first time you actually did see yourself like this?
I don't think I lost myself, but I took great pleasure in what had been created.
Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of people comment on particularly on her wardrobe, but how with T'Rina, they felt like a lot of elements came together really beautifully. Yeah.
So your first appearance as this character is in the episode Unification Part 3, which is hugely important to us Trekkies. It was really cool seeing the fact that they continued the unification storyline from TNG into Discovery. That part was awesome. But, let's talk about your first day working now, because that's your first episode, and it's kind of a big deal. So what do you remember about your very first episode?
Oh, I was terrified. I was like, I mean, that's the sweet spot is like excitement / terror. Like that's, where, but I was pretty, like, it's such, Star Trek is such, it has such a legacy, right? Like it's just such, so stepping on the set and then playing a Vulcan president. And then, you get on the set and it's this wild, the sets are wild, what they've built. They're so beautiful. And then there's 3 cameras like pointing. So it was, but my godsend was Doug Jones. My first scene was with Doug, and he was, I mean, have you met him? Have you spoken to him?
Oh, I so want to get him on the show. I'm hoping Cool Water Productions hear my plea. Let's get him on, please. But yeah, I got to talk to him. He's one of my favorites.
He is such a generous soul. Like, he is such a beautiful, and at one point I should just, well, I'll just say it now. Like, one of the things that makes Discovery such a joy and gift to work on is the entire cast and crew are really remarkable people. And like Soneqhua Soneqhua very much believes that it's a family, and she speaks to that, and she supports that, and there's just this really beautiful energy on that set. And particularly working in a pandemic, it could be really ugly. It's that everybody's dealing with a lot of additional stress, right? But it's a very special set. But then, yeah, my first day, I walk on set. There's this super tall, like I've never met Doug Jones, this really tall, skinny guy with his like rubber head, and and he just he welcomed me. And in doing so, some of my nerves were put at bay, and it was a really lovely introduction. Like I could have started in the big scene where she's beamed aboard, where she's a hollow. That could have been the introduction, and that would have been much more intimidating, I think, because you're just thrown into with a whole bunch of people. But it was just me and Doug and the director, and so he put my fear to rest. Yeah.
I mean, I got a whole bunch of questions here about Doug too, but I actually want to ask you about Soneqhua since we already brought her up as well.
Yeah.
And, I feel like the relationship between President T'Rina and Captain Burnham, it can be allies, it can be complicated sometimes. There's a lot going on there. So you've gotten to do a few different things with her essentially as a character. Mm-hmm. So what's it like to play off of Soneqhua? I mean, because you guys are doing all sorts of different things with these characters and their relationship together. How is she as a scene partner? What do you feel that she brings out of you?
She's just always present. Like, it's a tremendous gift that she has as an actor, is that she shows up 100% every single time, every single take. Like I'm sure the production knows, but she is such a remarkable number one. Because she raises the bar and upholds it every single day. So yeah, she's just always present, exceedingly, again, like, so you go to your read through on day one and this woman comes like around the table to everyone and says, "Hi, welcome, I'm so glad you're here." And you're like, "Who's that?" And then you're like, "That's Soneqhua." right.
Captain
So
on deck.
Sorry,
Captain on the deck.
Yeah, but just like this sort of, because she's so real, because she's so genuine, because she's so present, you're just doing the work. You just show up and do the work. There's no weird vibe. There's no like weird status hierarchy thing. You're not trying to access somebody who doesn't, I've been on sets before where it's pretty clear that the actors don't really want to be there and they don't really want to engage with you. And they're pretty grumpy and they just kind of show up and say their lines. Or you're doing your takes and they're no longer on set, like you're just talking to a mat box or a but she's always there, and so it allows for the best possible work that you can do.
And I know you guys were also pretty sure for that season, because I always get my dates mixed up here, but I'm pretty sure season 3, especially, it was really a height of the pandemic. So you guys were probably following different protocols, right? I mean, do you remember?
That was season 4. So season
4 more. Okay.
Season 3 was 2019. So there was
Okay.
no.
Just missed it, luckily.
Yeah, season 4 was all pandemic. So that was like, COVID, being COVID tested 3 times a week. Everybody's like, there's the actors group, the crew group, the admin. So everybody was supposed to stay in their bubble. You rehearse with masks on. The only time the masks come off is when you're actually shooting, so you don't even get to rehearse with a mask off. What else? Like, generally when you're on set, part of the way you survive is by engaging, chatting with your fellow actors, and it didn't come to a standstill, but you're kind of in 4 corners of the room, right? It's like everybody's social distancing. So, and then of course, production was shut down a few times, whether people got COVID or whether there was a scare, or so the season for season 4 was very, very long. I think we started shooting in October and we didn't wrap until the end of August.
Like I mentioned, I got a bunch of things about Doug Jones here, so let's just get into that.
Okay, let's get into Doug Jones.
Don't tempt me. On that note too, let's talk about your budding romance with your 2 characters here. Because Vulcans, they don't typically outwardly show emotion because, as we mentioned, they're in control of their feelings. And Saru, as a character, he's also a fairly introverted kind of Kelpian. So these 2, in my opinion, though, despite all those things, they have like the best romance on the show. And I would just love to find out how you found these characters, how you were able to make these 2 characters fall in love the way they have, and kind of bring that very subtle but outright and really beautiful chemistry into your performances.
What a lovely question. I don't think it was intended as a romance out the gate. Like, as I say, I think T'Rina was introduced in season 3 with no intention of really bringing her back. Doug and I have talked about this a number of times. So I think he actually mentioned to the showrunners, like, what if something happened with these characters? And I think that the audience, like you said, how did you create chemistry? I believe that chemistry happens. I think it's hard to create it. So sometimes you'll see two actors on stage and you're like, oh, what is that? Like something happens between those two. So I think that the audience, they saw chemistry between Saru and T'Rina, or between Tara and Doug. And then the writing room has just created this beautiful, old-fashioned, slow burn, sweet, old school romance, right? Like, it's so lovely. And so we just have to show up really and say the words. You know, I think both of us, we were equally chuffed when we found out that it was going to move forward, and just really love the sweet scenes of the two of them meditating together, or like the gift of plants, or like, it's just all so sweet, right? So there's not a whole lot we have to do except for play our characters and speak the words that have been written for us. And I mean, also, I just love Doug. Like, he's so dreamy to act with. He's another one. He's just there. So you look in his eyes and you're like, oh, okay. I'm like, we're here in the scene. Like, he's just present, right? So it's a gift. It's not all actors are like that, or not all actors that I've worked with are like that. And it's a real gift when you can just arrive in a scene and have your partner be completely present, because it invites you to be completely present as well.
And since you're spending so much time with this budding romance with Saru and not so much Doug Jones, face to face, I should say, when you see Doug out of his makeup, I mean, do you actually remember that it's him, or is there like this kind of disconnect?
Oh, it's always a surprise. Like, it's always a surprise when I see Doug, and it's always a treat, because he's got the sweetest face, as you know. But I don't see it often enough. Like, usually but he comes into the chair. No, I'll see him when he shows up on set, if we're working the same day, because his processing time is slightly less than mine. And if I'm lucky, I'll get to see him at the end of the day. But one thing you should also know about Doug, I'm sure you know, he's just so incredibly funny that when you're on the prosthetics truck with him, like, everybody's in stitches. Like, he's just he's so much fun to work with. So another segue, but I had to share.
Well, it's a perfect segue. And, just to kind of put a little ribbon on this particular part of the conversation here, no spoilers, but what do you think? Are Saru and T'Rina going to go the distance in this relationship and be the 32nd century power couple?
You know, I'm not allowed to say a word.
Oh, okay. Oh, my. So kind of to follow up then with our Doug Jones
talk. I guess
talk.
We'll all wait with bated breath and see.
I didn't know Vulcans could be monsters, but Tara, you have proved me wrong today. So, we would talk about how, Doug Jones is this amazing actor, and, no lie there. Find the lie. I can't find it. But, he's a guy who has his face completely hidden when he's performing on Discovery. But he's finding all these other ways to emote. And, let's talk about President T'Rina now. And basically, she has kind of the opposite problem as Saru, because her face is showing, but she can't express emotions the same way any other Terran actor could, if you will. So I'd like to hear a little bit about how you find the humanity in your character, but also still remain Vulcan.
Well, I will share that they, particularly when I'm working with Tunde, the predominant direction is Vulcanize it. So I'll always do my take, which I think is very restrained and very Vulcan, and then he'll come and say, okay, that was great. Now can we do another take? And I'll be like, Vulcanize it, and he'll be like, yes, I want you to. What do I don't know. It's just again, I kind of, it's a physical sensation of moving into a mental space. It's really difficult for me to articulate where I find her or how I find her.
Let me try rephrasing this question a little bit. Maybe it might help, because I feel like with your character, as opposed to, let's say, Ethan Peck as Spock right now in Strange New Worlds, I feel like Spock is a character that he's harder to approach. Like, if I happen to be on the bridge of the Enterprise and I'm just walking along and I see Spock, I'm not going to be able to say hi or have a conversation. But if I saw President T'Rina, and once I get past her security, I would probably try to actually like talk to her and feel like I can actually say something to her. So there is something there that makes her feel a little bit more, I guess, natural and like open to being to having these conversations happen. Let's say. So, is there something that you feel that causes that, or is that just something in you?
I would say that's probably an aspect of myself. I would say that if you believe that, then that's probably a component of the writing as well. That there's something about the way that the character's been developed that you find her a little more accessible or approachable. And maybe that speaks a little bit to the human aspect that I referred to earlier on. That there's just an element of her that is it empathetic? I don't know. Is it? Yeah, I'm not sure, and I wonder if all audience would say those same things that you said. If everybody finds her to be approachable in terms of your standard Vulcan or your traditional Vulcan, or yeah, I love the observation.
Yeah, I mean, for my money, I feel like this character is something about her. I mean, it might just be again like just what you bring to it as a human being and as a performer. Like there is something as far as Vulcan goes, where it's like it's not the kind of distanced character, if you will. Like let's say T'Pol on Enterprise. I'm not familiar with some of these characters, but a lot of Vulcans are typically distant, and I think that's a word used also. A little disconnected, maybe. But
Right.
President T'Rina feels very connected in the moment with the people, and she feels like she's part of it, not just doing her own Vulcan thing in her own Vulcan mind.
Right. I would have to say that I think that's maybe because how I approach it as an actor is that she does have the feelings, but she finds a way um, to engage with the world around her by bypassing that.
Hmm.
And so that it's not that they're not there, but there's a filter. There's constantly, yeah, it's curious. I don't know. That's mysterious work of actors, is like I probably can't even tell you what's happening. It's just my interpretation.
That's
Yeah.
what we try and figure out on the show is how to demystify all these little secrets. So,
Yeah, exactly.
I think the big takeaway here is that this is just a giant compliment to your abilities. So
Oh,
we'll take it as that way.
thank you.
So yeah, I do want to go back to a part you mentioned earlier, which was you talked about in theater you played Saint Joan,
Mhm,
and that is a character with big emotions and
mhm,
ferocity. And then here you have a
mhm.
character like President T'Rina who is subdued in a lot of ways. So something I'm curious about here is when you play a character like Saint Joan, there might be some almost trauma from playing that character too that you get, or just there's so much within it that you can probably take a lot of that weight on your own shoulders. All the problems that character has, all the things that character goes through, you might be putting it onto yourself. With President T'Rina, there is still a lot of struggle and all sorts of political intrigue, but a little bit different. But still, I guess my question is, when you play the character President T'Rina compared to Saint Joan, what do you feel afterwards? Is it the kind of thing where you need some time to get yourself down? Is it, since it's a Vulcan, more of a feeling of tranquility, perhaps? What do you feel as you play this character, and especially after you play the character and you're done and you're getting out of the makeup chair?
Yeah, it's definitely, I would say that is more of theater TV comparison,
Okay.
because usually there's such an adrenaline rush that comes with performing in the theater that it does take you a good long while to come down. And certainly, like the generalization or the stereotype is going to the bar afterwards for a couple of drinks to wind down after the show, right? Like that. But yeah, there it's a different musculature. With Trina, if anything, it'll be coming down from a very long day on set.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's a very different emotional world, a very different emotional state. So after a day of working on set, no, I don't feel like, and partially what you just said, like you're sitting in the chair for half an hour afterwards, so that gives you time just to kind of let go of the day.
So you're
Um,
able to kind of compartmentalize the characters better when you're performing on TV as opposed to on the stage when it's just much
I
more
guess so, but it
legal
depends
for
too
you.
on the character. But like,
Okay.
I will say that I find it very funny, like in terms of, because I talk about myself as being hyper emotional. Like I'm a wildly emotional human being. it's just part of who I am. And I think it's so hilarious that I'm cast in like, well, T'Rina, and prior to that, this very repressed Mennonite woman. There's something, maybe it's the juxtaposition of like this huge feeling world having to be compressed and filtered through this, the narrow filter of logic, or I don't, but I do find it really fascinating. But yeah, I totally haven't answered your question, and I made up a new question along the way.
Not every question has an answer. It's sometimes just a journey of figuring it out, right? So I'll take what I can get. I think it is a lot of information because, I think, as we've said in the show a few times and with other guests too, there's not always a concrete reason why something is something. Sometimes it just is. And I mean, like you're saying right now, in fact, I feel like maybe we're finding something because you're saying, real life Tara is hyper emotional. And a lot of that probably does leak into the character and the way you're performing it. So even a subdued version still has all these undertones of emoting. So I think that's something there. There's definitely some. We're digging through the layers. This is the therapy session. We're finding them.
Okay, nice. I don't even have to pay for it.
I know.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So I'd like to kind of go back to your character day one on Unification Part 3 to, let's say, now the end of season 4. So what has been the journey for you to become that character on first day of set versus now last day where we wrapped up on season 4? Who has she become for you?
Well, I think like overall she's just become much richer and many layered. Again, speaking to this world, which is so crazy, is you get the material, you learn the material, you do the audition, you have a fitting, you're on set, you do the part, and then it's done. So that's the luxury of working in stage. You have all that rehearsal time. You have all the time in the rehearsal hall to explore the world of the play, explore the characters, explore the relationships, the dynamics. What do you want? What's the overarching journey, right? You don't have that luxury in TV. So what I'm trying to say is that having much more time to play here through many more episodes over another season, it just becomes richer and fuller.
That's a good answer. I'll take it. So last thing now about Discovery season 4, and I want to talk about one of the final scenes, I should say, of the season finale, and that is when we get to meet the president of Earth, who is played by Stacey Abrams, and that was a big deal at the time, and I think people still talk about that as a pretty big moment in Star Trek history. So I'd just like to hear what your memories are of that day and being that close to Stacey Abrams.
Well, I think it's different as a Canadian than an American.
Probably a little bit, yeah.
But I remember like everybody was a buzz. Everybody was really, really super excited. Everybody was really jazzed. It was a wild week too, because that last week of shooting, we were at the AR wall working like 16, 17-hour days. And I think we shot like, when Stacey arrived, we might have started shooting just before midnight on the last day of the shoot. So you're already kind of in the state of, like it's been a very wild ride the whole week. And the AR wall is just trippy to be working on to begin with. And everybody was so jazzed that she'd been cast in the part and really, really excited to meet her. And she's lovely. Like her energy was so beautiful. Like I thought for somebody who, like I got, we always imagine things from our own POV. So if I'm coming to act on a big show, it's a major cameo, and I don't have a lot of acting experience, I think I'd be pretty nervous. And she might have well been, but boy, was she like, she was calm, she was generous, she was genuine, and she's a big fan of Star Trek as well. So I think she was really excited to be there. So it was just, overall, it was, it was very festive. It was very celebratory. Everybody was really, really excited about what was happening.
Yeah, I don't know how I'm going to make it happen, but somehow this year or next year, I got to get Doug Jones and Stacey Abrams on this show. That's kind of the goal here.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell Doug. I'll tell Doug what a pleasure it was to speak to you.
Oh, you're a wonderful liar. Thank you.
It's true.
All right, so Tara, as we kind of come to a conclusion of this episode on Trek Untold here, a few more quick things for you. We're going to make this almost like the speed round, if you will. So,
okay.
Because I don't want to give you time to think about this one either. I want you just to say it. So, best gig, worst gig you ever had?
Oh dear. Oh, how can I not think about that? Best gig, worst. I have to. Well, Star Trek's up there as one of the best gigs. Worst gig. Ooh, worst gig. Worst gig. Worst gig. Oh, that's. Oh, come on. No
Trying to make
time
you spill the
think.
tea.
Oh, I'm really what?
I'm trying to make you spill the tea.
Oh man. I mean, I've been in some really bad plays. There's been some bad plays. Yeah, where you have to do them like 100 times and like you're like on, you've done 3 and you're yeah, that's as much as you get from me for a worst gig ever.
Fair enough. How about a moment from your performing career that was, let's say, the most challenging role you've had, but then it became the most rewarding role for you?
I'd have to get back to you on that. That's a really hard question that proved significantly challenging, but also significantly rewarding.
Yeah.
Like I kind of have to go. I'm trying to think of shows that. I mean, I recently was in a play called Silence that was directed by one of my favorite directors. His name is Peter Hinton, and he's a true visionary. And the premise was wild because the character that I played, she was deaf. And there were actually deaf actors that worked on the production, and so bringing the whole thing to life was very challenging, but it was probably one of the most beautiful pieces of theater that I've been in, and it's when it was fully realized. So, but like there's been many gifts along the way that have I think everything that we take on is challenging to some degree. There's always an element that's, how do I stretch myself to be a Vulcan? Like, or how do I, and then hopefully, inevitably, you learn something from every character you play.
So on a similar note, what would be the most valuable lesson you've picked up along the way, whether it be about acting or about life, or maybe about something that spilled into both those two worlds?
You're talking about the most valuable life lesson?
Most valuable lesson you've learned along the way, whether it be about acting or life?
I don't know. I think that changes along the way, but I'll say the most recently, like I think because I'm middle-aged now, right? I think, we spend so much of our youth full of ambition and have so many aspirations. But I've come to peace with the fact that none of it goes with us. And so, how do I guess the phrase that sticks with me the most is I stumbled upon this quote that says, "May I realize that loving kindness as my essence." And so just to in reflection or in relationship with yourself and with others, just to live well. That's my latest. Yeah.
That's a good quote.
Sometimes I'm not super articulate. I hope that.
I mean, I just dragged like all these real deep questions out of you for like an hour. Like, tell me about the intrinsic elements of Buddhism within your acting. So I mean, I think it's okay if you're a little exhausted from that.
Yeah, no, no, it's very simple, but I think it's important. Yeah.
And by the way, too, just to let you know, you might be middle-aged in human years, or you might consider yourself to be middle-aged, but in Vulcan years, you're a baby, so don't worry about it.
That's right. There you go. Yeah. There you go.
So last question, Tara, what is the best thing about being a part of the Star Trek universe?
Oh, well, I think it's something that I've already mentioned. It's all these beautiful people that I get to work with when I'm on set. That's been an extraordinary gift.
All right, and of course, anybody who's listening, obviously we didn't ask anything about Discovery Season 5, because I know better. I don't want to get sued by Paramount. I enjoy having both knees working correctly. But yeah, it's been really wonderful speaking with you today, Tara, and just like hearing about how the character comes together, hearing about all your experiences, and I'm very excited to see what's going to happen next for the President. And I don't even know if you know what's going to happen next for her, but I cannot wait to see if that romance continues. I'm shipping it.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you and speak with you, Matthew. Thanks for having me.
That's it for this week's episode of Trek Untold. Until next time, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Trek Untold, all one word. If you'd like to directly support this podcast, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter over on patreon.com/TrekUntold, which gives you access to some great perks that can't be beat. Or pick up some merchandise from our store, or use my Amazon shop link to check out all kinds of different Star Trek merchandise. Links for all these things are in the show notes. Shout out to Triple Fiction Productions for being a key sponsor of Trek Untold. Don't forget to check them out and all of the fine folks whose ads you've seen or heard on this podcast too. If you have any questions, feedback, or comments for the show, or would like to suggest a guest or discuss sponsorship options for any of these episodes in the future, send me a message at trekuntold@gmail.com. Special thanks to Cool Waters Productions for providing us with this week's guest. Check out inhouse-con.com for more info on upcoming events with all of their Star Trek clients and the other celebs that they work with. And head over to coolwatersprod.com to pick up autographs and more from all of them. I hope to see you here again as we uncover more untold stories from Star Trek and beyond, and get to know even more amazing people who have contributed to this ever-expanding universe. Until next time, I'm Matthew Kaplowitz, and remember, fortune favors the bold.
Trek Untold is sponsored by TrekSphere.com, promoting fan-produced Star Trek content in all forms, is powered by the RageWorks podcasting network, and is affiliated with Nerd News Today.